Hey,
Hey, Michael, how are you?
good. I did it. I figured it
Yeah, you
out.
did it. You did it. Your
My
first Instagram live.
totally. My team coached me a lot in the
Well,
basics.
I told them it was easy. Once you do it once, then it's just like second nature.
Totally. It is easy. That's true.
Great, great. Well, just to give everybody who's tuning in a little hello, my name is Rachel Gallaher. I'm the deputy editor at Gray Magazine, and I am here with architect Michael Green, who is joining us from, are you at Salt Spring Island?
I'm on Salt Spring Island. Yeah.
I've been following your Instagrams. They're very beautiful.
I feel very lucky to be here for
I
sure.
was like, of all places to be during this time, like that's
Uh-huh.
a pretty good one. So,
Yeah.
um,
No, very lucky.
so as part of our virtual expo that we launched probably about a month ago, we are doing a speaker series where we're connecting with architects, designers, product designers, really all around the world right now to just try to keep everyone connected and kind of hopefully inspire other designers and creatives to keep going. We'll all get through this.
Totally.
So I'm curious, speaking of that, I'm curious to hear, like, how have things changed for you over the past month in quarantine? And, do you have any kind of tips for designers or architects who are in quarantine who, have to be really hands-off in such a hands-on industry right now? What are you doing to kind of, keep your business going and push forward?
Yeah. So we've been really lucky. So we I think closed down the office almost 6 weeks ago now. And
Okay.
so the unique thing about us for our firm is that we work remotely. We have projects all over the world. And so we're used to working in
Right.
environments where, we use Zoom all the time and
Oh, yeah.
our clients aren't there. And so in a way, we were kind of already pretty prepared for this kind of thing. And
Okay.
that was just good luck, really, more than
Yeah.
anything. But
So it wasn't a huge change for you.
it's still a big change. I mean, one of the successful things that I think any good design practice is culture. And so our team
Mhm.
being together is our culture, and the strength of our
Right.
work is kind of directly related to spending quality time together. And then, well, we can't. And so one of the
Right.
things we've been trying to do is really make sure that we're doing lots of team meetings, getting the whole group together weekly,
Hmm.
but more often whenever possible.
Yeah.
And starting sort of new initiatives as well. So not only looking after our projects, so all of our projects are still going,
Okay.
but actually also doing initiatives to look at, so what does this change mean to us personally? What does it mean
Mm.
to us as an office, and what does it mean to the design
Hmm.
industry, and
Yeah.
really to everybody's lives on the planet right now? People are reevaluating where they're at, what their life might look like post
Right. Right.
COVID, right? So one of the things that I think is really interesting as people are moving is other designers are kind of learning to live in this new environment. I think
Hmm.
probably the most important thing we all can do is actually not spend as much time on the computer as we otherwise are doing.
Okay.
And I think this is a chance for people to remember that, getting back into hand drawing and hand painting and creative things that are actually outside of the computer are the
Okay.
way to give your brain a bit of a rest and still be creative. And so that's
Right.
something that I've been doing and really enjoying a lot. It's a
Oh,
kind of a
great. Great.
reminder to go, to get away from digital, go analog
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
while.
which is kind of hard right now because everybody's, I mean, I'm on so many Zoom, like you said, Zoom calls
Yeah,
and FaceTimes and this and that. And I found actually pretty quickly into it that I got kind of burned out on it.
yeah,
And, like you said, that there's something about that connection. Like, when we're in the office and like we're just sitting there and we're all working and like I can turn to, my assistant editor Claire and be like, hey, I have a question. Or, like just even walking to like go get water, I'll talk to somebody. And it's like
right.
those like really unique, like spontaneous moments that I feel like I'm missing. And I've talked to a lot of people who said like, yeah, we can keep doing our work, but like that is really kind of the magic element that's missing right now. So
Right. I think creativity means that you're turning your brain on, and then you're taking a pause and turning it on and taking a pause. And that
mhm.
what the way we all, whether we realize it or not, are working throughout the day is those pause moments are going to the coffee machine and chatting with
Yeah.
somebody like you're saying. And those are really, really important. And
Right,
I,
right.
for me, what I've been good, lucky to do because I'm here on Salt
Mhm.
Spring is be able to get outside. and really make my pause moments, even though I can't do it with
Mhm.
somebody else, I can really be outside doing things and just
Right,
go
right.
breathe, I mean, you and I know each other, so you
Yeah.
know me, I want to be outside
Oh
all
yeah,
the
you're the outdoors type.
time. Yeah. So, but it's like incredibly, restorative for me from a
Hmm.
design process point of view too. And
Right, right.
yeah, and I have to say I'm super proud of my team. They've been able to
Mm,
hold this together really, really well. And actually,
yeah.
to some extent, I think some of the best work I've seen out of the team for a long
Oh
time has been happening in
wow.
the last month and a half.
Okay. Well, that's
Yeah.
good. That's a positive then.
Yeah. I mean, I think in life you have to find all those positives, and there are positive stories happening right now,
Especially
for
right
sure.
now, I've been
Yeah.
seeing that like moments like this, people, it brings out the best and worst of people, and I'm like really trying to kind of find the best right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I
and
think
so
that's
you
right.
kind of mentioned, started talking about this, but I'm curious, like, what you are doing to stay creatively engaged. I know, like you mentioned, you go outside a lot, and the
And
hand drawing.
that's my normal process, right?
That's how.
And the mountains, the wilderness, like hiking, kayaking, biking, whatever. Any moment I'm doing that, that is my creative process. And then
Great.
like the creative moments I have are they flow pretty well because I'm getting that kind of very restorative time. So that's for me my
Hmm.
process. But I think
Yeah.
there's another thing that I'm doing a lot, which is trying to stay aware of what other people are up to, and not just my
Okay.
friends, but like
Yeah.
friends, certainly friends, but friends from all walks of lives. So
Okay.
not just designers, but really trying to feel out what they're going through right now and what might that mean for the future. So
Right. Right.
whether it's sort of people reevaluating, where do I want to live in the future? Is COVID
Yeah.
teaching me a little bit of something about my life choices?
Right.
Um,
Right.
or what
Yeah.
really matters to me? I mean, how much is my professional ambition going to be my driver versus my family ambition? And all
Mm-hmm.
those things that are really core,
Hmm.
major life decisions, I think
Yeah.
people are starting to think about right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's because we're all getting this massive break in a way, right? And it's
Totally.
good. It's good. It's really good for society. So I think as designers, that's also an opportunity. We're kind of in a place where if we're watching what is happening around us, we're
Hmm.
seeing places where things don't work very well that we can design to improve,
Right.
or new
Right.
ways of living that we can design solutions around,
Yeah.
or new ways of creating connectivity. And I
Hmm.
think it happens at all scales. So we're really interested right now. We've just sort of developed a research group to look at, okay, what does this mean for the city? What does this mean for
Hmm.
society in general? So big
Yeah.
macro thinking. What does it
Yeah.
mean for architecture? Does it change the future of office buildings, the future of residential buildings?
Right.
Certainly
Right.
the future of retail, right? Like what
Oh
is,
my. Yeah.
restaurant design? What does this mean in every aspect of building
Mhm.
design? um, Short term and long term, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
how do we roll back into restaurants with social distancing and bring them back? That's a design problem, right? That's
Absolutely.
a huge issue.
Yeah.
So seeing these kind of life changes right now, trying to understand which ones of them are just now, which ones of them are going to last. Um,
Mm-hmm.
right into interiors, right into product design, I think we're going to see major waves of change. And
Yeah.
so, as designers, that's our opportunity. This is an amazing chance for us to rethink a lot of the things that haven't been working. So
Right. Right.
there's that meme out there that's sort of, let's not return to normal because normal wasn't working. And
Yeah.
I think that sentiment is exactly right. And as designers, we should be really using this to leverage the change that a lot of us have wanted through
Hmm.
design, in the way people live their lives, moving to localized neighborhood sort of centers,
Hmm.
strengthening communities, all these things that we have been talking about for a long time, people are really deeply needing and feeling right now, which
Yeah.
creates a hugely important design opportunity for no matter where you come from in design.
Yeah. It's also interesting. I feel like it's kind of this like new level playing field where nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw the extent of this. And so it's almost like nobody really like had to jump. It's like this is open for everyone can like jump in and do it. And I think that's exciting too. Because who knows who, is going to come up with some idea
Yeah.
from this. So I'm really
Yeah.
interested to see
That's
what
the,
the next 6 months, next year and a half.
mhm.
Because I think that you're right. I think a lot of things are going to change, and hopefully for the better.
I think absolutely for the better. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting moment, right? There's a huge
Hmm.
conversation of we've been moving and becoming more and more urban. Is that is this the moment that
Hmm.
changes?
Hmm.
And not just in the
Hmm.
developed world, but in the developing world where, I'm always really interested in what's happening in the developing world. And
Right.
the movement to cities has been an economic push, but right now the cities
Yeah.
are what are closed down in places like India or
Hmm.
Indonesia.
Hmm.
And so the city's no longer as attractive as it once was. And what does that mean, right? And
Right. Right.
it's
Right.
it's going to be interesting and
Yeah.
and I think good. And I
Yeah.
think that the other wonderful thing is everybody realizing the air is clearer and we can see things we never saw before. And
Nature is healing itself.
it,
It's getting that time, which is really, I mean, I do hope that people
yeah,
realize that, oh wow, like, global warming is a thing, and like, it's
yeah,
harming us, and this is our planet, and we need to embrace, you know
yeah.
healing that. So
And
yeah.
and our actions obviously did add up,
Yes.
right? It's hard to
Exactly.
deny,
If
but
you
all of
had
a
any
sudden,
question.
yeah. I mean, like I was out on my boat and I could see Mount Rainier, and Mount Rainier is 300 kilometers away from me. I've never seen Mount Rainier from here,
Wow.
and so what is that? 200 miles away or whatever.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and yeah,
Wow.
it's like amazing, right? That
Yeah.
level of you know, and of course, I hope everybody remembers it and goes, that's what we want, and therefore I'm going to take personal action.
Right.
And obviously that's I don't know, super important to all of
Yeah,
us to think
yeah.
about. So yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that, the focus group that you guys kind of have been doing. What can you tell me about any other projects, that you're working on right now that you're really excited about? Like, what's coming up for your firm?
Right. So, I mean, we're, as I said, we've been lucky because none of the projects have stopped. We've actually picked up
Right.
projects, which is a real surprise.
Oh,
We've
that's
had
great.
really, really interesting projects come in the door in the last month, which
Okay.
I wouldn't have, I'm
You'll
like
take it,
super,
right?
yeah, and they're cool and the clients are cool. And, so we're lucky. So we have stuff as usual. We have a really cool project in northern Sweden we're working on right now.
Oh, fun.
That's
Okay.
it's actually really interesting because it's an entire community center for a remote community in northern Sweden, and so
Oh, wow.
it's everything from cultural spaces and music performance spaces and
Yeah.
restaurants to gymnasiums and swimming pools and
Oh, wow. So it's a big
bowling.
project
It's got
then.
a bowling alley and a climbing wall
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
yeah,
That's
and I
fun.
and I think they're holding on to was going to get value engineered an ice climbing wall just for me, which makes me happy. So
Your the Michael Green,
ice
ice
climb, well,
climbing wall.
yeah, the client told me as long as I come and teach people to ice climb, it'll be okay.
Great.
So
You're like, I can do that.
yeah, totally. So then
That's wonderful.
we have a fun project in Paris that we're doing. It's a tall wood
Okay.
building, not super tall, but tall enough in Paris,
Hmm.
and we have a couple big buildings in Silicon Valley
Okay.
for a company I'm not allowed to say, but
I
like
figure as soon as you
one
say Silicon Valley.
one of the biggest companies in the world. I think we can all
Okay.
guess.
Okay. We can all
Um,
we can all kind of guess on
yeah,
that.
so and those are office buildings, and office buildings are going to
Uh-huh.
change, right? Office
Right.
buildings are
Right.
starting to kind of, it's a really interesting moment where we're not working in office buildings right now, and maybe we
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
rethink what they are. So we have a
Yeah.
bunch of those. And then we
Okay.
have projects like we're doing one on Bowen Island, which is
Oh. Okay.
a super cool project that is really about creating a kind of retreat for people and cultural retreat
Mm-hmm.
with new homes, with a lot of new homes. And it sort of speaks to where we're at, which is people's realization
Mm-hmm.
that they don't necessarily have to be in the office all the time and that they can actually,
Right.
like be like I am working in Salt Spring right now. And
Yeah. Yeah.
things that we didn't think was really possible, people are starting to realize is possible. And that's
Yeah,
part of
which
that
I think
decentralization.
is actually, like, we live in such a culture where it's like, be at your desk, eat lunch,
Hmm.
like, don't take a break, just you're always working. And especially
Hmm.
because of phones, and, like, I often will find myself at home, late at night, like on my phone doing email. But now it's interesting because I feel like, I'll go just take a walk around my neighborhood in the middle of the day, and I'll come back and like feel refreshed. Or so I think,
Yeah.
people are realizing that it is really important. Like, you don't always have to be at a desk to come up with your best ideas. And I always find when I travel and go on vacation, I come
Hmm.
back and I just have this like crazy, like, creative, productive burst after that. And it's, it's because I've been out of my element and gotten to travel. And so I'm going to be interested to see how people start applying that more
Yeah.
into the way that we work.
Yeah. 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 I think it's pretty exciting, right? These are really
Yeah,
exciting times,
yeah.
and a little bit scary, but mostly
Well,
exciting.
yeah,
So
yeah. No, I mean it's a mix. It's a mix. But
yeah.
so I know, you've been in architecture for a long time, but I am curious if
Are you
you have
are you calling me old? Is that what that is?
as soon
Just
as
I
that
take
came
that
out of
as
my
a
mouth, I knew
slag.
that that
It's
was
like a
the wrong.
slag. You have been in architecture forever.
So anyway, I'm curious if you always wanted to be an architect. What did you want to be when you were, 10? Is this always been your career path or?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
an
okay,
exciting
okay.
story. Yeah, like since I think I was about 5, I've been wanting to be an architect.
And you
So
come from a creative family too, so I'm right.
you know what? Like almost everybody's medicine. Everybody's a doctor, and then
Okay,
there's like 1 or 2 creatives in my family. Yeah, and my grandfather was an architect. My biological grandfather was an architect,
okay,
and
okay.
a pretty. He had an interesting career for sure. But otherwise, no. I'm like,
This you knew.
it's I knew when I was really really little, and yeah. I mean, there's a big long story there, but it's I knew when I was
Yeah.
little, and my grandfather, who he was an architect, and he'd had this really interesting career. He wasn't the best dad, and so I actually grew
Okay.
up equating architecture with not necessarily like being so dedicated to the profession that you weren't
Oh,
necessarily
interesting.
a
Yeah.
well-rounded parent. And so
Okay.
it's interesting. Those 2 things have always been really relevant to me, that combination of
Yeah.
those 2 things. And it was a
Yeah.
big driver for me to make sure I didn't screw up the parenting side
Well,
while I
I
was
was gonna
trying to do the,
say, I know you have 2 kids, and I see that you guys travel all the time. You're always out on adventures, and so it seems
yeah.
like you're really making up for that.
Well, at this point, they're old enough that they need their space. So it's more about
Oh,
giving them
well, yeah.
space than anything now. But yeah, anyway, it's just interesting. So since a little age, architecture was for sure what I wanted to do.
That was
And,
it. Great.
and,
Yeah, I'm
and I've been
actually the
lucky.
same way. I knew I was going to be a writer when I was in first grade. I came home one day and I
Wow.
told my parents, I'm going to be a writer. And they're like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, this is just a whim. And
That's
same
cool.
thing, like, been doing it ever since.
That's awesome.
So then, speaking of kind of, people that you look up to or who influence you, who is someone who has like really shaped your life professionally?
So this one's pretty easy for me, and it's
Okay.
a guy named Yvan Chenard.
Okay.
So Yvan Chenard is the most people know him as the founder of Patagonia, the store Patagonia.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He was a world-class climber, and that's
Mm-hmm.
my background in climbing,
Yeah.
and so he was a world-class climber, and he really built his company. In the early days, he was just climbing out of a truck in Yosemite, and
Uh-huh.
he was a blacksmith, and he was making pitons, which are those little wedges you slam into the rock and
Oh,
clip
okay.
your rope to, and
Okay.
it's the way back then in the 60s, that's how they climbed. And after a while, he sort of looked at what he was doing. He's like, I'm here because I want to enjoy nature, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
pounding metal that's scarring the rock forever. And so
Okay.
he redesigned his company to do what's called clean climbing, which meant that
Okay.
he could be at one with nature
Mm-hmm.
and not leave damage in nature.
Mm,
And so
okay.
you might start to realize the parallel here for me is that,
Yep.
and so he then built Patagonia as a company and started
Mhm.
to realize the same thing. He had 2 companies, a climbing gear company and Patagonia, and
Okay.
he started to realize the same thing with Patagonia was that, and he did something that no business leaders really ever done, and he published a report. This is in the
Mm-hmm.
late 80s, I think. I published a
Okay.
report that said, here's everything Patagonia does bad for the environment. And
Wow.
it was a very contrarian position to do this. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, look at my company, we're terrible.
This is what we're doing wrong.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
but what it did is that transparency built trust. And he said, not only are we doing these
Mm-hmm.
things wrong for the environment, but every
Mm-hmm.
year I'm going to tell you how we're going to do better. And
Okay.
his kind of putting business decisions constantly on their head has been incredibly inspiring to me. It's kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
wonderful that it comes from a climbing and outdoor ethic because that's my
Yeah.
roots.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's the way, as a business leader, he's the model I've often followed in the way I run my practice.
That's great.
Try
And it's
try to
he
always get
almost
better.
holding himself accountable too by publishing that report. It's like, well, here we are. Like we put this out here. We can't just keep going. So
Right, right. And he didn't stop there. Like every year he launches new amazing initiatives, and some of them we're actually piggybacking off of in our work. So he launched an initiative that brought together, I think it's 260 major clothing brands in the United States to say, like, we're building these really, or a lot of you are building really poor environmentally standard products
okay.
with really poor employee standards. So they're using sweat
Mhm.
labor in
Oh
Asia.
yeah, right.
And he said, what if we all agree to raise the standard to here? We'll all compete here instead of down here, but we'll
Okay.
change laws in other countries to make to give employees rights and health and welfare, where well-being, and we'll
Yeah,
change environmental rules. And so he took this little company of Patagonia, which is relatively little, and
yeah.
he partnered with Walmart, and the two of them
Oh,
together
I
made
did
this
not know that.
change. Yeah, so it's friends of mine that did that, and
Interesting.
I think that's the kind of inspiring role that a little company can change an entire global industry. And they built a trade union for clothing manufacturers that's now the largest trade union in the world.
Wow,
And it all started with Patagonia as a company
that's
saying
incredible.
that we want to make a difference, right? So it's the
Yeah,
idea
yeah.
that small voices add up to giant change.
I like that.
It's pretty inspiring, right?
That's yeah, that's amazing.
So
I want to
with
go like dive into his
that's deep.
story now.
So there's a book I recommend called Let My People Surf, which is if you
Okay.
run your own business, I highly recommend the book.
Let
Let My
let
People
my
Surf.
people serve. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna put
by
that
Yvon
on my
Chouinard.
list. I'm a big
Okay,
reader, so
there you go.
um so then kind of piggybacking off of that, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Um, I think the thing I always reflect on is that everything starts with why. And
Mm,
that's actually a book by Simon Sinek, who lives in Seattle. Um, but it's the idea that we should be driven by purpose, and
mm,
and if you constantly keep centered around a purpose, the
mm-hmm.
business as a business, as a creator,
Yeah,
everything you're doing is going to have meaning to it. It's not
right.
going to just be sort of incidental. And
Mm-hmm.
people, there's a concept that Simon Sinek talks about, which is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Mm, mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think kind of a window into some of the success we've had as a business is we almost always talk about why we do things. And occasionally we talk about what we're doing, but we're
Well,
always
you have
talking about
to.
why. Yeah.
Yeah,
But mostly we talk about why. And the clients
right.
come to us because they values align around things and why. And
That's great.
so purpose, I think, is the most important aspect of personal sort of
Mm,
direction,
mm-hmm.
and certainly in work. It's the most important thing, but I think it's at the root of who we are as people, right?
Mm.
And for me, that's really important stuff.
Yeah. So now we have a book club.
I like that.
Great. So then I am going to close out here. Kind of actually, I feel like it's funny. Our questions have just like really done great job,
Merged.
like jumping. Yeah. So, we had been talking about like focusing on the good and kind of talking about what good things are coming out of this. And I've really been interested to see the way that people are donating their time, their money, their materials. People are jumping in to help their neighbors and things like that. So I've been asking everybody like, is there any organization, any person, any company, that you've really seen, stepping in this time that you would like to, give a shout out to?
Yeah, there's a lot, obviously, and you
Yeah,
can hit this. The hard thing about this is it's hitting every part of life, and
right.
I have a huge animal thing, so I'm often focused on
Oh,
animals or nature or whatever. But
yeah.
I think right now the organization that I think is one of the most important on the planet is Médecins Sans Frontières, so Doctors Without Borders.
Okay.
And my sister is a doctor that works with refugees mostly. She's a pediatrician that works with
Oh,
refugees.
wow.
And I think the thing about COVID is it's weird for all of us in the developing world or
Mm-hmm.
the developed world, but it's disastrous for
Mm,
those in the developing world.
yeah.
They don't have the infrastructure to get through this like we are. They don't have the economic infrastructure, they don't have the
Right.
healthcare infrastructure, and it's going to be very, very bad in places like Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, you know, it's so easy like to live in our bubble. I'm in my nice
Oh
little
yeah.
Salt Spring bubble.
Yep, yep, yeah.
Um, but organizations that are really going to be there to help the parts of the world that most need it are
Mm-hmm.
who I think need the biggest shout out right now for sure.
Yeah. I mean, even something like, washing your hands with soap, like we just take that for granted. Of course we can do that, but like, you
We don't
said
have clean
places
water. Yeah.
that, yeah, exactly. So
Hmm.
that's a good point.
Hmm.
Well, all right. Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us. I hope you feel that your first IG live went well, and I'm excited to see what you and your firm are doing, in the upcoming months and years.
Cool.
Well, hopefully next time we'll see you, it will be in person.
Yeah, hopefully at some party in Vancouver or Seattle
I
or wherever.
mean, it could happen. It could happen.
You never know.
All right. Well,
Uh,
enjoy the rest of your day and keep
yeah,
posting
thanks.
pictures at Salt Spring. I'm loving those.
Okay, thanks. Enjoy
All
it,
right.
and thanks for doing this. Cheers.
Yeah, of course. Bye.
Bye.